What is up, everybody? Sven Diesel here. We're going to be tying up the Matuka Leech. Now, if you've been following me for a while, you know I've been tying up some of these Matuka classical patterns. I love game changers. I love the Bunny Leech, and so today I kind of wanted to combine all of them. And here we go. Let's get started. We got an Arex TP615. This is a trout long. I like the longer shank because we're going to be putting a spawn head on. I've got a tungsten bead. This is a 7/32 for weight, and we're going to be using some lead wire 0.025. You could go a little bit heavier if you want, but I'm going to just break off about 2 inches here, and I'll start wrapping my my lead on here. This is just doesn't, you know, the tungsten bead is what's really going to cause it to dive down on your rest on your strips, and that's the key ingredient here. This lead wrap's just to help aid it in getting down, hopefully a little bit more evenly, but we're going for a kind of a wounded baitfish minnow. And so, but this is a little trick I do for placing the spawn head on. I basically push that back so that I get a clear eye. You can see I'm leaving a hair length here just so I know where that eye, I don't want to crowd the eye, and I don't want to struggle to get that spawn head on when we finish the fly. And that lead wraps are going to hold that in place right now, and so I know where that position for the head is going to be. So I'll just build up a nice thread base. I'm using some Semperfli. This is some 8/0 nano silk, and we'll just do some spiral 45-degree wraps up and around through this this lead. If you try to go vertical, you'll find that your thread just goes in between your wraps and spreads them out. So I always start with a few 45s up and down, and then we'll advance our thread back to the bend of the hook. Now, that's not a super clean thread wrapping job on the shank, but not necessary. We're going to be covering it up. And first we're going to be using, this is a new product by Whiting Farms. This is a silver badger in the freshwater streamer, and this is a rooster. And so I'm going to select two feathers out of here. The original Matuka used a bird that is, I believe, now illegal to use, and so this is a feather I like using that comes really close to it. So I'm going to take these two feathers and put them back to back, and I'll align those tips so that we get a really nice clean tail here. And if you've ever tied the Matuka fly, it's super addicting. But I'm actually going to measure the overall length here, and then I will strip off the fluff. I'm not going to strip it just from one side. I'm going to strip it from actually both sides. And you'll see why here in a minute, because we're going to be building up a really nice body, and I'm not going to, this is where we're varying from the Matuka pattern, and we're just basically using it as a tail. I'm not sure if this would be the same as like a deceiver, lefty craze deceiver tail, but I believe it looks like a Matuka tail, and that's why I'm calling it the Matuka Leech. And those tips align just right. That is just money right there. I really love the movement of these pushing up against each other in the water, and if the tips split a little bit, it looks even more like a tail. And so I'm going to just tie those stems up to about the lead, and I'll go ahead and do some nice securing wraps. And I got a little piece of nano silk there I missed. I'll go ahead and cut that out. But you can see these, I'm basically pinching them right now to keep them in place for where I want them to be. And I'll check that, and that looks pretty good. So now we're going to step up towards the neck a little bit, because I want the next feather to be a little bit smaller to build up a little bit of a cone here at the back. And we'll go ahead and tie in the tip here. And if you've never tied in a feather before, you're going to see that the feather's kind of concave one way, and you want that concaveness when you're tying a game changer type body like this to go backwards. Now you can see I'm not being too careful with the wraps here. I'm not really concerned about trapping fibers, or, you know, if you do that, this will take forever. And so I basically I call it the 80% or 90%, that I get 80 or 90% of them going backwards, and the rest I'm going to not worry about. And so usually on a feather game changer, you're tying in, you know, 40 to 100 and something feathers. And so little trick here for all my game changers, starting around the tail, I kind of wrap backwards over those first initial wraps, and you can see I want it to go a little bit more, and so I'll just do one more wrap back, and that kind of is our transition piece from that Matuka tail into our body. So I'm going to grab a feather that's a little bit more towards where I grabbed the tail feathers, and then we'll use about 2 or 3 from that section. And I like to tie these in one at a time, just because this is fly tying's fun. It's enjoyable. I'm not trying to whip this out as fast as I can. I'm more enjoying this, and so I like to just really work the one feather at a time. And you can see this feather has a little bit of molting or speckle right there. That looks really neat. I really have enjoyed this cape. I'm gonna have to place an order and get some more in. I know it's offered in a few different colors, but I'm surprised I haven't seen it at my local shops yet, because this freshwater streamer stuff's awesome. So we'll go ahead and clean that up a little bit, and you can see that's kind of getting into the taper where I want, and that silver badger provides that dark center with the white tips. It's really awesome. So I'll just continue this process, and then I'll eventually work my way into some bigger feathers. And I don't know how much of this is relevant. It's the same process over and over again. You tie one game changer and you're going to have a lot of experience in one, tying in feathers. Well, first, one, selecting the proper feathers. If you struggle to get a good taper, pull out 10 to 15 feathers at a time, lay them out, and then put them in size so that you know where you're at in your progression. I don't really have space to do that, and I never know how long I'm going to make the game changer or the body, and so I usually just wing it as I'm going, trying to pull out of the same area. If you do grab one that just doesn't look right, unwrap it. Use it again at a later stage. And so we're just going to fast forward through tying in all these feathers, and that way we're able to focus on the fly, keep your attention, and you'll get the gist of it. But as you get up here more into the bead, I always tie in a little bit larger feathers, more towards the back, a little bit webbier, and then I always finish with a smaller feather, almost similar to not the first ones I tied in, but once you get up there, check to make sure you like how it's going to look before you start whip finishing. But we're going to add some flash here. This is Crinkles On by Snake River Fly. It's really awesome stuff, some good properties, and this is the pearl color. And I'm just going to pull out a little chunk here, and I know this isn't the correct way to taper it, but I'm going to basically kind of spin it in my finger, get it so I got a nice little clump of it, and then I'll just pull the ends right here, and just that way I get a nice, I'm going to match them up to where my hackle ends, and I'll go ahead and tie it in with 2 to 3 wraps, and then fold it back over, bringing it kind of in the similar direction the first one went, but I'm trying to create kind of a fan here, and that way it's got a nice little flash, something to attract. And this, we're going to be using that clear spawn head, and so that flash is going to shine in. I kind of want it to just be an attractor, be translucent, and just say, hey, here I am, come eat me. So we already have the profile, and so I just want something that will draw some attention. So we're going to do the same to the other side. I found that it's just easier to tie in smaller clumps here than to do kind of the flying V and wrap that over, just because we don't have a lot of room on the under bead. And I'll just go ahead and pull that over and then plick. That's all you got to do, just pinch and pull. And then we'll do a nice clean up this head a little bit, do a nice 3-turn, 4-turn whip finish, and this is solid. Now we are almost done. We're going to be putting a little bit of, I usually use liquid fusion for when I have the ability to do overnight, but for this purpose I'm going to be using some Semperfli no tack. This is really good UV, and I'm just going to apply a little bit right here in between my bead and my thread gap, and I'm going to apply a generous layer. I call it about what a squirmy wormy would be, or an ultra chenille. And you just work your way around. The key is don't stop rotating your vise, because if you stop, that's going to drip down. And then get your head ready in your other hand, make sure it's oriented correctly, and then when you get it ready, just stop, shove it on, and then make sure you get it all the way. You're going to feel it kind of butt up against that tungsten bead, and you know that's perfect. Now, once you have it in place, make sure it's not positioned all skewy. Just cure that resin. Super quick. Is it as durable as the liquid fusion? I believe so. The only reason I would recommend the liquid fusion over this is if you have the time to wait overnight, and I believe the liquid fusion is a little bit more flexible, and so if you're smashing this up against rock banks, I think it provides a little bit of insulation or buffer between that tungsten bead in your head and kind of an absorption, like, you know, the foam inside of a bike helmet. And I'm just going to drip a little bit more resin in there just to kind of fill the gap, and you can put as much as you want. Just don't let it seep out into your feathers, because you know that's the point of, we're not making a head, we're just curing this into place. And then I always put a little bit right here in the head and let it just seep down in, and then cure it up, kind of just solidifying the head and limiting the contaminants and stuff from going in there and, you know, potentially ruining our fly. So just cure that up, make sure you don't get it in the hook eye, otherwise you're going to have fun when you get on the river or lake when you're throwing this. You know, I always hate that when the eye is covered. So we'll put it back in the vise here. The last step here is we're going to be putting some eyes on, and these are some spawn fly fish eyes. We're just going to use a little dab of Gorilla Glue. I just dab it right in there, and this is just how I do it. There's a lot of ways you can do it. I don't like to put don't do a generous coating. All you need is a little bit to hold it in place. The adhesive on the back of these eyes combined with that super glue is just going to bond it, so you don't have to worry about your eyes falling off. The adhesion alone, I found, is not enough with any eye, and so I just place it with my bodkin, shove it down in. You can see that super glue kind of forms around the edges, and we'll do a secondary trick here in a minute to keep those in place. But we'll go ahead and do the other side while that's drying. And that's this is the super glue regular. It's not the gel, because I want it to set up nice and fast, and so we can finish this fly in a tutorial. If you have all the time in the world, you could use the gel. It would give you more time to place it, but for the purpose of this, we want it to set fast so I can get it off the vise and hopefully get out and fish it. So same process, use your bodkin to just slide that eye into place. Place it down in there, trying not to get any super glue on your fingers, because if you get it on your fingers and touch the eye, then one, I think it dulls the eye, and secondly, you're going to have a heck of a time placing it after that. So here's the little trick. I take a little bit of this thin UV resin. It's an ultra thin resin, and I just want to put a little dab over that eye. I think that it one, makes it a little bit clearer or shinier, and secondly, just holds it in place. But the key is not to put a ton of UV resin on. You want to just put a very minimal amount. A little bit goes a long way. So you can see, oh, yeah, I think I put a little bit too much. If you put too much, you can go ahead and dab that out with your finger. We're going to let this one go for now. And I got a little air bubble there. That's okay. I don't think the fish will care. We'll do better on this other side though. So we'll just barely put the bare minimum, maybe half a drop, and just kind of spread it around and then cure it up. So sometimes I think the other side is a little bit better. It provides kind of an oval, which makes the eye look kind of differently to me personally, which I would assume is the same for the fish. But there you go. There is the Matuka Leech. The color combinations are endless. You can add more flash, you can add different color hackle, but this freshwater streamer just really is nice. And look at that tail, that's going to be money in the water and have good movement. So appreciate you watching, and tie some up and let me know how they go.